my question is, do you think there's a possibility that maybe we'll see something like the Manhattan Project in the U.S., but AI related to gather the forces and maybe be China in that way?
I mean, I think most people in the government agree they aren't as skilled at this as the private sector that's currently doing what they're doing. And there are trillions of dollars of private investment that are going into this, much more than the government could plausibly scrounge together at the moment. So it seems unlikely there would be a large government project here, given the particular situation. This is a large amount of investment. It's a comparable, I think it's even more than, say, with the dot-com boom in the late 90s. And the whole world is investing all around. So the Manhattan Project is where they had a very particular private insight about what was feasible. And it was expensive, but honestly less expensive than what they're currently pouring into AI. So, and the government doesn't have any special insight here. They don't have any special ability. And it's not especially a military technology, really, either. Like the Manhattan Project its only use was military. And this is just a broad technology useful in many places, not especially in the military, really. The military does not look like one of the early applications for AI.
Yeah. Well, also, I have another question about AI. Like in general, like what do you think? How are we actually close to emulating human minds with AI? And do you think like what would be the first change that would happen if we reach human minds level of AI?
So there's a lot of different parameters you can be tracking over time. And the thing that makes the news is impressive demos. But the most fundamental parameter that matters for the economy and society is what actual job tasks they actually displace. So if you look at that trend, we haven't actually seen much movement on it lately. So that suggests we're a ways off from having substantial impact there. And we have seen these booms of interest in AI and automation roughly every 30 years, going back a century. So this is another one of those booms. It's a big boom. There's a lot of investment and attention, but in terms of revenue, I think I saw something that said we're at like $50 billion a year revenue, and it needs to get up to $1 trillion a year revenue in 5 years if it's going to justify the payback of all this investment. And so that's quite a challenge. But even $1 trillion a year revenue is still only a minor part of the $80 trillion a year world economy. So that's still, less than 2% of the world economy. So we're just still a long way away from dramatically affecting, changing the world economy. But that probably will happen eventually. One thing to know is that we have a whole literature on what's called general purpose technologies, which have appeared in the past, like the steam engine or electrification or the personal computer and the internet. And in all those cases, a new technology appeared that had very broad potential, but then it actually took several decades before the potential was actually substantially realized, usually because you just had to change other things to adapt to it. Radically new technology just can't be used very effectively if you just leave everything else the same. You have to change things to make use of it. That was true for the steam engine, electricity, personal computer, the internet, and it's probably going to be true here too. So that's another reason to just expect this to take a while. So you guys are young. You might be midlife before something like that starts to happen.
Yep. And for the next question, I'd like to quote one of your recent posts. So you wrote a post about you basically did a small survey, like how 7 to 1 folks said that we have more generalists. We need more generalists. And on that topic, so my question is, do you think humans should optimize for more being leaning towards generalism or specialization to specific topics or specific fields? And as an add-on question, do you think AI models should emulate how humans prepare for this or optimize for these two options?
So for a long time, AI researchers have distinguished AI from what they call AGI. Just a sec. My wife is calling. Yes?
If you get a call from either the collision place or the insurance company, would you just ask them to call me?
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. That was dealing with the vandalism I told you about. Sorry, I was saying AGI is different from AI. AGI has been pointing to this idea that humans are relatively general thinkers compared to most of the automation we've ever made. And so people have wondered when machines would be more general. But it's also actually true that humans are more general than most jobs. So the world economy has generated lots of jobs that are useful to do, and each individual's human's capacity for generality is usually more than is needed for most jobs. And most people would like to indulge that and express and develop that ability of generality. So that's in fact why most wannabe intellectuals, one of their main ways they fail is to failing to focus enough. So the world of jobs, even intellectual jobs, has many jobs for specialists and far fewer jobs for generalists. So your question, should there be more generalists, can be asked two ways. One is, should you try to be a generalist, or should we try to find ways that there could be more generalist jobs? That is, if you try to be more generalist, but the world doesn't have more generalist slots for you, you will just, not be what the world wants, and the world will punish you for it. So I might think the question is, could we find a way to coordinate to promote generality better? And that's a matter of how we organize intellectual inquiry and in academia and journalism and elsewhere. So I have many opinions about that, but you just trying to be general won't necessarily help that much. In fact, most people are in fact trying to be more general than the world wants. Most people like to think generally and they enjoy it, and the world looking for more specialists, and people have to learn to specialize to find a job and find a place in the world. And that's a difficult trade-off, because often if you love thinking and you love ideas, then partly you love more general ideas, and then the world says, no, you need to specialize, and that's less fun.
Do you think AI will create or destroy more jobs on the topic of jobs and specialization?
In the long run, it'll certainly destroy jobs of bio-squishy people like us, but it'll create a lot of jobs for the AIs. The world economy of AIs will just be much larger, and it will grow much faster. So my rough estimate is doubling, say, every month instead of roughly every 15 to 20 years like it does now. So for the last century, the world economy doubles every 15 or 20 years. An AI-based economy could double roughly every month or every few months, much faster. And that means doubling the number of jobs, doubling all the things that, are being done. But jobs for bio-squishy humans, the question is, when are we outcompeted by machines? And that will happen eventually, probably not soon, not in the next 10 or even 20 years, but it will eventually happen. And people should be prepared for that, when we could talk about how to prepare.
Do you think the conventional jobs will be overthrown by AI? And do you think being a data scientist or a machine learning expert or engineer is the best job for future?
So, again, there's a huge difference between what happens in the next year or 5 years versus 20 years or 50 years versus 500 years or 5 million years. Look, in the 5 million years time frame, AI is just going to be doing everything. It's just going to win. Even in 500 years, probably. Maybe in 50 years, probably not. Not in 10 years or 5 years. So in the near future, you guys are probably thinking of what to do in the next 20 years, not the next 2,000 years, right? So that's supply and demand. There may well be an increased demand for machine learning engineers, but there'll also be an increased supply. So you should wonder if the increased supply will be enough to match the increased demand or not. So it's risky. The biggest thing you should know about a disruptive time, a time of change, is that it's hard to predict. So I would focus more on robustness and generality in your personal skills in the near future. Rather than say learn a particular programming language or something, I would learn skills that will just last you your whole life, like how to write, how to talk, basic math, basic concepts, because those will just be useful in whatever you do. There's a point in your life where it makes sense to gamble on a very particular kind of job that may be upcoming by learning very particular skills for that job, but that's soon before you might take the job. And in a world where it's stable enough to predict that that job will probably be there in the few years it takes you to prepare for it. But you guys may be too early for that.
Well, also, I have another question with the jobs and AI. Like, do you think we should try and make AI more human aligned with this generality and what you mentioned?
So again, think in terms of what there is a demand for, and you can either be a supplier or a demander here. So if you say, should you want more human AIs, that you choose the different AIs you interact with, and you can decide how human you want them to be, right? That's you as demander. And if you talk to an AI and it doesn't seem human enough, and that is a downer, and you'd like something that seems more lively and personality-like and vital, then pick an AI that's that. And if enough people do that, then that's what the market will supply. They will supply the kind of AIs that you want. If you mean as a supplier, you were an AI developer, I might say, well, think of what the customers want. Fundamentally, we have a capitalist economy with buyers and sellers. And if you say, what should something be? If you mean as a seller, you should sell the things customers want. And as a buyer, you should ask, well, what do you want? What exactly do you want? Look, we have human professionals, and often we don't want our human professionals to be that human. So, for example, servants, maids, waiters, we want them to function and to be human, but we don't want them to tell us it's their birthday and tell us they were sad last night because of something that happened, right? We mostly want professionals to interact with us in what we call a professional way, which hides a lot of their humanity because we don't want that from them. And for, say, a lawyer or a doctor, you also tend to not actually want them to be very human. That is, well, they're human, but you don't want them to show all aspects of themselves to you when your doctor is consulting with you about your pain in your elbow. You want them to relate to you as a professional, right? Which is a certain kind of human, but it's a kind of human that a machine can more likely be. And often we have swapped out professional humans for machines without much disruption because people didn't actually care about humanity. Your dry cleaner, your person who does your laundry, right? You put your laundry in a machine and it gives you back the clothes, you're just as happy mostly as if you had handed it to a person to do the laundry because you weren't trying to get that much humanity out of that relationship, right? So it depends on, what kind of relationships the machine is sitting in, what kind of roles it is, what kind of features you want it to have.
I want to ask a question on the topic of machine intelligence, like specifically what intelligence might mean. So there's a case that what separates us from animals is that we are able to reason and predict into the future a couple more steps than animals are. And do you think there's a case where AI potentially cracks that forecasting ability? And if so, how would it affect the economic state of the world, and how would it affect maybe the relationship between AI and us?
It's true that an ability to forecast is, substantially correlated with what we call intelligence of many sorts. And often, if you want to forecast well, you want a more intelligent person or group to be doing it. But it's also true that we understand in many ways that forecasting can just be impossible. So the standard concept, say, of the stock market is it's following a random walk, which means that it's not predictable. And the weather is in many ways not predictable, farther out. We just understand fundamental limits to prediction. And even an AI that's super smart can't necessarily predict the stock market better because it's random. They could predict it a little better, but you should still not expect them to be that much better. And there's what's called mixed strategy in games. Often there are games where you play to be unpredictable. So in tennis, for example, am I going to hit the ball to the right or the left side of the court? The other person would sure like to know. If they could tell, they would go to that side of the court and be ready for my ball. And I need to be unpredictable. And so I need to not give off any clues which way I'm going to hit the ball, which often means I just don't know until the last second which way I'm going to hit the ball in order to be unpredictable. So the world is full of situations like that where being unpredictable is rewarded, and it's actually easy. The person who's trying to be unpredictable can just win against the one who's trying to predict them, right? Say you flip a coin or use some random, quantum effect or something. There are just ways to be guaranteed unpredictable, and nobody can prevent you from being unpredictable. So that's just part of the world, is some things are going to be unpredictable. Now, but some people are trying to be predictable, and certainly when you're trying to be predictable, then AIs will be better at that. So, for example, many professionals, as we talked, want to have a professional reputation for being reliable and effective and competent. But sometimes they fail because people are kind of random, and we can't always maintain our composure and our ability and a consistent performance. But the people we pay more, actually, that's what we pay them a lot for. So my understanding is the lawyers who are paid the most, what they're actually paid for is never screwing up. You could do 99 things and then one screw up, and you're not good enough for them. Top law firms want the person who will only screw up 1 in 10,000 times. That's what they're paying for. And that's what top law schools are all about, is going for a long time, never making mistakes. So that's being predictable. So, a high quality AI lawyer will be very predictable and never make mistakes.
I believe you wrote a book called The Age of M, and basically, yeah, right. You talked about how human brains could possibly be emulated, and living robots could be created. How do you think how is that possible? How soon will it be possible? And do you even think it's a good idea to do that?
So there are many kinds of minds that are possible in the universe. And when you say, what will the future with AI be like? Part of the problem there is to know, well, which kind of minds will it be in that future? Different minds would have different futures. So I'm pretty confident that eventually some sort of AI will be there, but I'm not that confident which kind. And that partly says, which kind of AI will we make the best first? That is, the first kind of AI that's human level, that can displace humans across lots of jobs, will in fact suddenly actually displace humans across lots of jobs. And that could be different kinds of AI, and we don't know. My book, The Age of M, is about one particular kind of AI, which plausibly could be the first, but it's not obvious it would be the first. But the main thing about it is it's much more understandable and predictable to us because it's just like us. And that might make you value it more too. You might say, well, I would like the future to be full of minds like ours. And these minds are as much like ours as it's possible to be.
Sorry. Would you consider that kind of mind a conscious mind, or would it still be like a normal AI, which is basically programmed to act like a human mind?
So the word consciousness connotates a number of different things. Some people, the word consciousness is about a style of interaction, a having a self-awareness of your history, ability to describe how you're feeling in some sort of integrated way. Those sorts of consciousness, yes, AI and M's would have it because we already have computer systems with that. Most large language models are conscious in that way, in that you can ask them questions about themselves, what they've been doing lately, who are they, how are they feeling, and they will give you a coherent answer of the sort that meaning of consciousness gives. There's this other meaning of consciousness people have, which is that there's just this light or fire inside you, and then you're really real if you have that light or fire, and other things could act just like you, but they wouldn't be real and have real feelings because they don't have that light or fire. That sort of consciousness is something that many people feel compelled they just have. They just have the strong belief that they have it. And the usual way it's conceived they don't actually have any evidence that they ever will had it in the past or will have it in the future, nor do they have any evidence that anybody else ever had it. They are willing to presume based on similarity, but they actually have no evidence that anybody else has this life or fire inside them other than them right now at this moment. And in fact, you could split their brains into two halves and say each half couldn't really know that the other half has it. It's just willing to presume it. So I'm just willing to presume that lots of things can have this, but I don't know, and no one will ever know. But I do think this is one of the sorts of slanders that different kinds of minds will throw at each other. They say, you guys don't have the light or fear of fire. You don't count. You don't matter. We're the ones who matter because we have it. And no one will ever be able to prove otherwise.
Well, which one do you personally believe in?
I would just believe that if this is a thing, then it's possible in lots of kinds of minds, because I'm a physicist and I just don't see where physics could possibly notice if you're made out of silicon or carbon or these other sorts of things. If there's some physical process that, makes some things conscious or not, it has to be this strangely crazy complicated thing, much more than all our other kinds of physics, in order to care about these sorts of details.
So in the case of superintelligence, do you think that if there is a case that multiple AIs manage to reach the superintelligence level, do you think there will be a hierarchy which emulates that of the human hierarchy, like the political kind of hierarchy, like the ones we've been through? So, for example, could it be democratic? Could it be autocratic? Or do you think there will be some sort of a hierarchy that we've never seen before?
So there's two questions there. One is there hierarchy in the sense of just status? Do people respect each other differently? And the other is, what sort of governance structures would they have? But an implicit very first question is how many of them there are. So we have 8 billion people in the world today, a lot of people. We have fewer firms, but a lot. We have fewer nations, etc. So at various scale, there are fewer units. And some people think they'll just be the one superintelligence, who is the God that rule all. That seems to me to be quite a deviation from what we've seen in the past. We have typically seen multiples of things that compete, not a single thing that rules all. And of course, even empires have tried to rule all in the past and have never ruled the whole world. One might rule the whole world in the future, but that would still be an empire ruling, not an individual. So I would just see the future of AI, like humans and other animals today, as diverse, a lot of them, a great many of them. But are they equal? Well, no. So unequal status is not only a robust thing in humans, it's robust in pretty much all social animals. Social animals have status, i.e. they treat each other unequally. They respect some of them more than others. And that's just very common in humans, and we're making humans in our image. So yeah, AIs will not be equal in each other's eyes. They will respect some of them more than others. That's different from the question of how they govern. It doesn't mean, so even in a democracy, for example, you can still have status. Some people are respected more than others, and that's certainly true in our democracy. AI will have available to them all the forms of governments we ever tried and more. As you may know, I'm an inventor of a form of governance that I hope will spread farther, and it seems to be a fine form of governance for AI as well as humans. But of course, that's a new thing in the world, not yet proven.
So I have one more question. I know that you mentioned how unreliable predicting is, but nonetheless, in the future, do you think AI will be able to reliably predict low frequency movements in the stock market?
No. The whole point is that if the stock market is predictable, then you can make money by making those predictions. So the more, what they call efficient the market is, the harder it is to predict. If low frequency movements are predictable, it would have to be because people are not, in fact, making money by reducing those movements, unless it's an equilibrium fluctuation, right? So you could have, say, a cycle that everybody knows is going to happen, and the cycle just happens, and everybody expects it, and all the prices embody it, and then the AI could predict it, but it couldn't predict it better than anybody else. It would just be something we all knew was going to happen as a cycle. You mean, could an AI predict low frequency movements better than other people? And no, that's doesn't work in the stock market. The whole point in the stock market is just really hard to predict. Any one person could predict a little bit better than another. Even any one AI could predict a little bit better in order to win some trades on average, but they couldn't predict much better unless everybody can predict it better, i.e. the prices just say it and everybody looks at the prices and there it is. So if the prices predict a cycle in the future, low frequency movements, then the AI can predict it by looking at the prices, but they couldn't predict it outside of the prices.
Now, do you think there will be any different on prediction markets? Because it's based more on understanding of the first principles of humanity and different mechanisms, and for example, geopolitics, technology, etc., instead of maybe specifically like random motions. Do you think AI would have a more of an edge on humans in prediction markets? Because I know that you have been a big advocate for prediction markets for a long time.
In ordinary financial markets today, the people who have an edge are called hedge funds. They are the super intelligent organizations in the financial market compared to individual investors. They, in fact, do win in their trades compared to ordinary investors. If you're an ordinary investor, you're trying not to trade against them because on average you will lose when you trade against them. We have organizations that are much better at making money in the stock market than others. And that will be true once AIs enter the world too. They will try to do better. Now, so far, over the last 2 decades, many people in finance have tried to introduce AIs into financial markets to have them trade better, and that's mostly failed. Hedge funds are still making their money the old-fashioned way, looking at piles of trading data, fitting models to it, finding patterns, trading on the patterns. That's how hedge funds make money. And of course, they also get, say, insider tips and information about what's happening in an organization. They trade on that. That's how hedge funds make money, and AIs could make money that way too.
And I have a question, just to get back to the singularity, like superintelligence question. So you mentioned that you, sorry to quote you, maybe if I quote you wrong, but that you believe that there'll be multiple superintelligent AIs there's a higher chance of multiple superintelligent AIs being than a single one. And my question is, do you think the superintelligence transition will be like a tipping point that like a specific point when one crosses, it'll become super intelligent, or will it be like a gradual process? Because intuitively, if it's like a tipping point, then if one becomes super intelligent, wouldn't it ensure that no one else becomes super intelligent?
The concept of intelligence is, first of all, often multidimensional, but even if you collapse it to one dimension, it's continuous. The concept of intelligence doesn't have any magic threshold in it. Then there could be magic thresholds in the world such that when you reach a certain intelligence, that allows you to do a particular thing in the world. But the idea of intelligence doesn't have a threshold like that. But many people have postulated that there are these thresholds in the world. And if an AI ever reached one of those thresholds, then that would suddenly allow it to jump ahead in ability drastically. And that's the FOOM scenario. And my ex-co-blogger Eliezer Yudkowsky often based his concerns on the FOOM scenario, that an AI would suddenly jump ahead by comparison with all the other AIs to become, therefore, super intelligent, and then so much better than all the others that it can now rule the world and dominate all by itself because it was super. But I just don't see those thresholds where if it passes that threshold, suddenly it gets to become vastly better. That doesn't seem that plausible to me. And so that's what I've always said about that. Yes, it's logically possible, but where is the threshold? We don't have any particular reason to believe it exists. Or that there are these particular, basically one way to think about it is there's an innovation you can find, and that unleashes a whole package of innovations, and the set of all those innovations let you leap ahead. So you have to have this clump of innovations. Now, we know a lot about innovation and how clumpy they are in history. What we know, for example, is that most innovation, most growth, not only in biology, but in the economy and even in science, is lots of little things. Big innovations, big lumpy innovations are not where most of the volume of innovation is. Most of the weight of innovation is lots of little things, and the few big things don't count for so much. And the few big things are not very clumped together. So that's why the world economy grows relatively steadily, is because all these different industries, all these different people getting innovations. When we average it out, when we add it all up, it adds up to relatively steady growth, because no one innovation makes a huge difference in the world economy. Even recent LLMs or the internet, when we talk about these general purpose technologies before, remember, those are the lumpiest things we ever see, and those can hardly be noticed in the overall growth rate of the economy. Electricity, steam, internet, personal computers, they were hardly noticeable, maybe a bit noticeable if you look really carefully, but not dramatically changing the overall growth rate of the economy. So for this postulated AI thing, it has to be way lumpier than anything we've seen, because the things we've seen would have not allowed one company in the world to take over the whole world, or even one city in the world to take over the world. Yes, there were cities that were early to the internet, early to steam, or early to electricity, but that did not allow them to take over the world.
Well, I have another question about another one of your books, The Elephant in the Brain. Do you think that AI could ever develop this concept of it? Yes. Do you think that AI would ever be able to have this kind of concept where it has hidden motives and stuff like that?
We are making AIs in our image by training them on our text, and we have hidden motives. So no doubt the default LLM is being constructed with hidden motives because it's copying us. Yes. It would be hard to do otherwise.
Yeah, but what about it having its own kind of hidden motives, maybe?
Well, yes, but I mean, it could have the sort of hidden motives we have, and that would be a problem. Many people are worried about AIs having hidden motives. They don't need to have a new kind of hidden motive to be worrisome. The sort of hidden motives a human have are plenty enough to worry about. They might, of course, invent some new ones, but most likely they would just learn the ones that we've taught them.
I have a question. So you mentioned that AI is probably going to be very not minute, but a small dot in the whole economical history. My question is, if
Wait, each AI, or you mean the whole idea of AI?
The whole idea.
I wouldn't claim that.
Right.
So I would say history is roughly summarized as a sequence of exponential growth modes punctuated by a few dramatic changes in the growth rate.
Yeah.
So obviously life itself in the first place, then, more recently, the rise of brains, and then the rise of humans with culture, and then the rise of farming, and then the rise of industry. And AI could be of the order of those recent changes. The rise of industry, farming, and human culture. The rise of AI could plausibly be as dramatic as those. But each of those changed the growth rate relatively smoothly and continuously. There wasn't any one human that dominated the world by acquiring industry or acquiring farming. That's not how it worked. Some groups that were first into farming or first into industry or first into human culture, those groups were able to win out over others, but not because there was a single entity that encompassed them.
Yeah, so I was wondering, do you think it's a possibility that maybe we reach a moneyless society if AI does become like a superintelligence being that takes care of every job, every industry? Do you think there's a possibility that we reach a society where we don't need to use money?
So the way to think about this is that we humans have pioneered many important innovations so far: language, trade, law, governance, science, statistics. Each of these innovations has enabled us to do more. And the question is, are any of them temporary innovations that will sort of go away later on and no longer be relevant? And it seems to be all of these innovations will continue to be relevant, including trade, including money. These are not temporary things that are specific to some time and place. They're fundamental innovations that will grow on. So if you think about biology, think about all the innovations in biology that are still around. Eyes, claws, lungs, fur. These are not temporary things, right? These are permanent innovations that will continue to find a place on most any creature in the distant future. They'll all need some form of energy, some way to see, some way to hear, some way to remember, right? Think about the main parts of a computer and computer systems and software systems. Those have been, once we invented like a hash or a sorted list, it's not like we no longer need sorted lists anymore. That's just a thing of the past. They become a part of our tool set that we continue to use again and again indefinitely into the future. And money will be like that. Money is just a well-developed, well-proven tool, very robust, and you'll just want to have it in the future to do stuff with.
I have a question about the learning itself now. So, do you think that the learning of AI, not only like LLMs, but smaller models too, can be made more effective? Like, is learning a NP versus P easy task or problem?
I mean, I'm not a specialist here, but obviously the abilities of these systems have been dramatically improving over a few years, and especially over decades. We aren't plausibly near the frontier of possibility, so of course they will improve. And then we have the more clear demonstration that in many cases humans have something closer to one-shot learning, where the LLMs are not doing one-shot learning much. So that suggests there's just a long way to go in getting better at learning.
Do you believe there's a border to learning, like how effective it can be?
Is there a limit? Sure.
Yeah.
But we're a long way from those limits, so don't know what they are. Honestly, within, say, 1 million years, I think we will hit limits in all technology. At the rate we're going, we are just rapidly advancing and understanding a great many things, and I think the universe just actually has a finite amount of stuff to learn. And once you've learned all of it, you will basically know how to do everything, and you'll slowly learn slightly better. Eventually everything you can learn is a 1% improvement, and then it's a 10% improvement, and then it's 1 in a million improvement. Like, 1 million years from now, we might be getting a 1 in a billionth improvement by rearranging something in efficiency, but we will be really down to the margins of looking for tiny improvements because we will have found all the big improvements before then.
And I have a question related to prediction markets. So lately we've been seeing a very huge rise in prediction markets, and my question is, like, with the invention or rise in crypto, prediction markets, decentralized compute like AI, do you think it's a possibility that network states will gain more and more power and will actually form like a whole network states, and maybe they could overthrow nation states, or is that still too into the fiction side?
I just really don't get network states that much. I get that people will, have online affiliations and organizations, but I just don't see those threatening the usual nation states much. They don't have the military power to, or other sorts of police power to directly threaten, usual governments. So I just don't see it. I'm just not getting it. We may have large changes in governance. Like I said, I have invented a form of governance that I think could be adopted more widely, but merely because people create a new online identity, that's not remotely enough to make that substitute for all the existing governance systems. Imagine you have a company with a board of directors and investors, and now you make a network stake into the company. Now a bunch of the employees go off and they have a website where they talk to each other. Okay, fine, but that's not going to. How's that going to overthrow the company?
Yeah, I think the one of the like steps in the network states is that after they form an ideological and like a internet gathering, they then purchase land to expand.
Well, they could then become a regular state.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certainly don't think it's impossible to become a regular state from some sort of online origin. There are many ways that groups can have their origins, but if they're eventually going to sit in the slot of governance of like states are, they'll have to acquire the resources and powers of states. I am very optimistic about for-profit governance. And so I'm excited by things like Prospera, where people are experimenting with that. But it's a long way to go from the tiny experiments we have now to what would need to sort of, make a big dent in the world. But I do think for-profit governance has potential, but that's still different from this network state then. For-profit governance, you have owners like Prospera. There are owners and they invested in it, and then they have the power of governance to try to promote the investment, and they own land and they have the ability to set laws and rules. And that's a for-profit governance, and I hope we get more experiments like that. But that's not a network state. That they've got, a spot.
Well, I don't think anyone has any questions, and I think we're getting close to the end. So I have a final question from you. I want to know the kind of like the answer for us, because like we are high school students and we were wondering what could we do. Like, do you have any advice for us? What we should read, or I don't know, talk to people who you might know.
Take charge of your life. Well, that is, you're mostly and will be encouraged for a long time to just do what you're told. Go to class, do the assignment, and then when it's time to pick a major, like talk to your counselor, talk to your parents, right? You don't actually choose much in your life at this stage in your life. Whereas, 3 centuries ago, people your age, they were adults and they were choosing their life. They chose their job and they married and they had kids and they decided where to live. They were in charge of their life. We created this period of adolescence of you being capable to be adults, but still treated as a child by being told what to do and told that you should better off just do what you're told. You shouldn't radically change that, but you should start to practice taking charge of something in your life. Setting up your own project or your own, agenda for what you're going to read and study or whatever it's going to be, but you're going to need to practice being in charge of your life, because eventually you will be in charge of your life. And often if you've spent your whole life doing what you're told and suddenly you're in charge of your life, you just don't know what to do. And you'll be bad at it. You haven't practiced. So you should practice being in charge. So actually, one of the first times people are in charge of their life is when they pick what college to go to. And that's good because it hardly matters. It matters a lot less than you think what college you're going to go to. Maybe it matters more what major you take. But that's at least a time when people start to think about taking charge of their life. So, most fundamentally, the more you took charge of your life, the more I could talk to you about what you would do as someone in charge of your life, what topics you want to study, what projects you want to try out, etc., what ambitions you want to give. So do you want to start a company? Do you want to do a software project? Do you want to learn machine learning on your own on the side? Those are all the sort of thing that could make sense once you're starting to be in charge of your life, once you're starting to actually make decisions for yourself. I'm weird. If you were like me and being weird, I could advise you more in doing the sort of things I did, but I don't have any particular reason to think you're weird like I am. But I'll say my particular life role has been as a polymath, someone who has learned many fields and then found connections between them. And that's a strategy that peaks later in life, but it's a strategy that requires that you learn many fields, not just do one. And that's expensive and not initially rewarded. So, you have to decide if that's for you. A lot of people, when they say get to the end of college, they go, okay, I should get a job. What job should it be? Tell me. And you go, you should have been trying that out for a long time. You should be going and trying different jobs, just going and living in different parts of the world, like follow your parents to work or get an internship. Just go experience the world to see what things appeal to you, what interests you. Your teachers and your counselor just can't tell you much about that. The schools, they just fail on that. They do not at all try to help show you the world and show you what place you could find in the world. They're just going to teach you what they teach and give you grades and hand you on to the next guy. One of the first things you should realize in taking charge of your life is you're in charge of figuring out what you want to do with your life. We're not going to hand that to you. A bunch of people will tell you what you should do because they want you to be like them or join their system or whatever, but you're in charge of that. And the only way you're going to find out is to go try stuff. Go try stuff. Talk to different people, look at different stuff, and see what you like. See what engages you. See what you're good at.
Well, thank you for the advice. And yeah, I think I'm really thankful for this interview. I think I speak for all my classmates. And yeah, it was really good. And goodbye.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you very much.